Hello, welcome. Marlene here for today's cookie project. We're making some baking themed cookies just in time for Mother's Day. Thank you very much to those of you that signed up for Patreon. That really helps my channel, and those of you that made donations via PayPal. You'll find the link to that in the description box. Your support really helps my channel, allows me to continue to make these videos for you. Also, shopping my Amazon link helps my channel, and sharing, commenting, and liking my content gets it moving in the algorithm, so very helpful as well. Now let's get started with the tutorial. As for the little cookie sheet cookie, you could certainly have it like this, smaller on a rectangle, or you could make it full size. You just need a rectangle with rounded corners, or you could trim that up if you wanted. And just as you watch that particular tutorial, you could imagine it for other projects. See how I layer my sections and how with stencils and masking you could create designs more easily. So now on to today's project. Here's my cookie. I have a dry cookie and I'm putting my little plastic here. This is actually the cookie sheet that we're creating, and it's to protect the white on that cookie. And now I'm just lining this up on there, and I'm just going to airbrush the little end lines right here like that, and now I'm going to turn the stencil to get them the other way. So I'm just darkening up the cookie. I find the white's a little washed out, so I'm just hitting the whole thing in pink. It's creating like some purple on the blue. It's converting that color, and it's just darkening up the pink. You can hit right at the edge of the cookie sheet right here just to create some shading, but I just thought they were a little bit washed out, so that's it. I like them better like that. Now I'm going to create that center area, so I'm hitting that with a bit of gray just to give my metallic a bit of kind of a background to grab onto. So I'm using this gray that I have. It's called Stone. It's just to give some pigment so that when I come in after with the airbrush, the metallic, that it actually, you know, pops. So I'm just running through the cookies with the gray, and then I'll come do the same thing with the metallic. So just a light misting of this gray, just to give it a, like I say, some background. Okay, so there. I've poured my luster dust in the airbrush gun, and I'm just getting a metallic finish on there. And because of that gray background, it just gives it a little bit more pigment. You see? Now let's lift that off. So now what we are left with is an inside perimeter and the outside perimeter. So we'll know exactly where to pipe the edge of our cookie sheet. So not everybody's keen on using stencils, but when you're doing stuff that's small, stencils, in my opinion, are the way to go. So now I've got the background of my cookie sheet. I'm going to come in and put the handle and the rim in a second, but I've made my cookies here with the stencil. Now, you could make any shape cookie as long as they fit inside of that rectangle. You could make little rounds, gingerbread men, whatever. I've made heart-shaped cookies, and I'm able to see right through the stencil, position them exactly on my cookie sheet. I've got my cookie colored icing and my spatula there, and I'm going to stencil those on to the cookie. So you're going to need thick enough to cover that silver, but you don't want to have it so thick that when you lift off the stencil, you're left with it creates like a lip that's not nice. So you see it when you're doing it, how much pigment you need. Okay. And there they are, pretty close to perfect. sheet. And now we can outline the inner and outer area of the cookie sheet. So I'm starting here with the inside. And it's important to stencil the cookies before you do this, or obviously your stencil's not going to lay right. And you're going to need to come in and paint this. And this you can kind of go over where the stencil area is a little bit, just to hide that seam. But you have a really easy line to follow. If you don't mask, well, you're going to have to eyeball. And also when you stencil the center portion here, well, it's going to have all those stripes or whatever kind of design that you're putting in there. So it's up to you. And now that I've got my perimeter on, I can come in. The perimeter has dried just a little bit so that when I come in like this, the pressure is not going to nudge that line over, and it's going to stay exactly. And you see we're creating our cookie sheet. Now once this has had time to dry, I'm going to paint it silver as well. Let's shake it. And there we have a pretty near flawless cookie sheet. I'm just trying to create kind of like the look of a piping tip here at the end. So we all know what they look like. Just the sort of shape here. And then pump it up. We're going to need to paint these, so we're going to let it crust over so that we can come in and at least run the brush over the surface of this icing. Sometimes it's easier to shape stuff with the needle, so you can just kind of create the general idea and then come in and tweak it while the icing is wet. Shape it to what you want. You're kind of sculpting instead. You see? I'm adding my guidelines here, and I don't need really much of the perimeter outside. I just need the inside lines. My cookie kind of warped during baking, so I'm moving the stencil around to get it to kind of work, and I'll tweak as I decorate. There, and then my bowl here. That should do. And that's it. I'm going to start off right here with this little area. This is what holds the actual whisk part right here. This purple was achieved by pretty much adding every purple food gel I have into my bowl. My color was just horrible to start with. Got slightly better when I added some pink to it. And now here I'm going to try to make this line a bit straighter. The cookie got wonky in the oven. Following the edge on this side. And you want to be sure to hide your marker lines, okay? And now I'm just going to flood this. Guidelines are for you. It's preferable that they're not showing. I'm using a silver pearl here to kind of create like the screw or whatever, the bolt there that holds the top, the hinge between the top and the bottom of the mixer. But you can pipe it if you want. I like the look of the pearl. Okay. And now we're going to let this crust over before we fill in the rest of the purple, but we can do the bowl. So for the bowl, I'm going to go about this much down. And then again, like I say, hide that guideline, and we're following the edge of the cookie over here. So there. And here I don't like my line. I'm just going to push it from the inside. That's better. To kind of reposition it. And now I'm just flooding this whole area here. We're going to shake it. Once this has had time to crust over, I'm going to add a lip on the bowl. And now we're going to finalize the top. I'm just getting the icing against that base, and then outlining the rest of the design here. And now I can pick up the cookie and shake the ripples out. Usually it doesn't take very long. I'm using that same icing, the same, it's called Wedgwood. And I'm just basically creating a long oval right at the edge like so. And then there. And that's it for right now. I'm going to start here at the top. I've got a small petal tip and I'm just, whoops, my icing there. I'm just doing a kind of like a petal, and just to create the look of the bunching that happens at the top of our piping bag. And then I'm just trimming that off right here. So that's it for that. This is a carrot cookie cutter, if you haven't figured it out yet. And I'm just touching right here with my white icing and connecting right here, and then a wonky line like so. And then the rest here in pink. like so. We're going to pick up the cookie so that it all smooths over. A shake, as you see, is all that's needed. If you want, if you can add a little tie right there. And now I'm using a number 44 piping tip, basically a basket weave without the teeth in it. And I'm just adding a stripe across here, which will be silver later. And then you're going to have to shape the end because it pulls more narrow. But you see, you get a nice line. Here are my cookies. I'm adding my icing. I'm not going to do sprinkles just because it's just impossible to find something that's going to have the right proportions. So I'm just going to stick with icing. The nice stenciled icing surface is giving just a nice flat surface to come in with the icing. If you were to do something so small, it would be like kind of rounded and then more difficult to add this second layer of icing to it. And I'm finding that shaping with the needle is working best for this. Okay. And my last two. If you wanted, I think you could probably create a second stencil to layer, just make the hearts a bit smaller. And then you could lay it on top and stencil that second layer of icing on the cookies, or you could airbrush them if you're looking for a time saver. So I mixed up my purple. Purple is hell to get right. And I don't love it, but I'm just going to use it. I don't want to waste this batch of icing. I'm just adding a bit of a border here along the edge of my little placemat. So I'm just doing a wiggly line. You could do whatever you want, dots or whatever. This is just fast. If you're creating dots, well, you have to lift up and down, stopping constantly the icing. This you can work so much faster, this wiggly line. So I'm factoring in something that's going to be able to be done quickly, since that's the point of a stenciled design. And now I'm painting my silver. It's always good to have a bit of color in the icing before you start painting. It just helps when your silver is a little bit translucent. This one's pretty opaque, and I've added alcohol, high proof alcohol, and this causes the product to dry very quickly and reduces your chance of pitting. If you have a lot of issues with that, it might be another factor, could be your icing is overmixed. If your icing is overmixed, it's already a little bit structurally compromised, and so adding any kind of liquid to it might cause it to get holes. So consider that if you tend to have that issue. And if you're not getting good coverage, chances are your product is not the greatest, and you might want to look into getting something, go on a cookie group and ask people for their recommendations. So you can see there, it gives a very nice dark or bright silver color, and it really doesn't use a lot. Before purchasing any kind of metallic paint for your cookies, make sure that it says that it is fully edible, not just Food safe. Food safe means it can be in contact with food. It does not mean that you can eat it. And here are my completed mixer cookies. I kept this very simple, but if you make them yourself, let your creativity out. Maybe paint the surface with some flowers or polka dots, whatever. Match it to the recipient's actual mixer. And here are the little cookie sheet cookies with the little piping bag. The piping bag, I loved that I got to reuse my carrot cutter because let's be honest, I don't use that very often. And the little cookie sheets, imagine that for Christmas, little gingerbread men with a more kind of festive pattern on the tablecloth. How cute would that be? Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's cookie project. I'd love to read your comments, so be sure to ask any questions or anything you want to know in the comments section. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future uploads, and I'll see you next time. And I'm just adding a stripe of what will be the silver icing across the mixer, like so. At the end there it pulls, inevitably. It is, oh my gosh.